have regarding the police resources that are being directed to food banks across the country that are dealing with the impact of, in some cases in Surrey, BC, recently we had so I am moving this motion. The motion has been moved. And, in Surrey, police were brought in to redirect traffic because of the huge amount of Canadians that were seeking food. We have food banks in Montreal where police have been directed off the very important work that they're doing on our streets to protect Canadians to provide crowd control at these food banks. The cost of food is going up in Canada, and we know that on April 1st, there will be a 23% increase in the carbon tax in this country. And that's not just in the provinces where the federal backstop is in place. Every province, even with their own carbon tax regime, has to increase this price to meet the federal requirements. And at a time like this, when inflation is roaring, when food prices are escalating, in some cases over 10%, in some categories, Canadians can no longer afford food, and we can no longer afford to see our police officers that are overstretched across jurisdictions, not just the RCMP, having to go to food banks to provide crowd control to protect Canadians and protect food banks because of these rising costs of food. And so with that, I'll move my motion, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Ms. O'Connell, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move to adjourn debate.
So moved.
And I'll ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote.
Ms. O'Connell.
Yes.
Mr. Biddle.
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon.
Yes.
Mr. Gay.
Yes.
Monsieur Lightbound.
Oui.
Mr. Shipley.
No.
Mr. Lloyd.
No.
Mr. Mutz.
No.
Mr. Kirk.
No.
Madame Michaud.
Oui.
Monsieur Julien.
Oui.
Yeas pour 7, nays contre 4.
Okay.
4.
All right, so we're going to continue, and it's Ms. O'Connell up for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I want to start, Commissioner Duhaime, in terms of sexual harassment and sexual assault within the service and the RCMP, can you please update us on what you're doing in your leadership to ensure that the workforce within the RCMP are protected, in particular with women, and that when there are instances or cases where there is sufficient evidence of actual an assault or violence, that these cases are also being referred to local police for charges and not simply a member loses their job and doesn't face consequences that a civilian would, for example.
So, Mr. Chair, let me give you a few numbers on the sexual harassment side of things over the last couple of years. In 2021, there's 48 out of 373 harassment files, and out of those, 12 did not meet the definition of harassment and violence. 16 at least had one allegation that met the definition of harassment. 18 were withdrawn by the principal parties. And I must stress that our harassment process is independent, which is not, it's independent from the RCMP. The investigator is independent. The decision maker is a member of the RCMP who's presented the investigation. And out of the total file, there's one that's still undergoing an investigation. I want to make it perfectly clear. One complaint is too much. One complaint, the damage in that unit's already been done. We want to get to a point where we don't get any more complaints. And the stats for 2022 are very similar. But the point is that I expect that every employee engaged in the organization respects and adheres to the core values of our organization. And we have measures in place to address with regular members. We have a code of conduct, which there's been some really, really great work that's been done over the last couple of years, where we're revamping the whole code of conduct to bring it back, to bring it to what is expected from Canadians when we are dealing with the code of conduct. So we're being more aggressive on everything to do with sexual harassment and sexual assaults in the organization.
Thank you. Director Vignon, similar question to you with your organization and the members serving. There was recent media reports, too, that there are challenges in terms of reporting given the nature of some of the work that CSIS members might do in terms of protection of identity, which all makes sense. But how are you ensuring that within the service that you're protecting employees and ensuring that the nature of their work doesn't prevent or create some sort of loophole in terms of reporting and the protection of members of the service, in particular women in this case, to be able to report, and obviously then the additional work to make sure it's a safe workplace for everyone?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. And I welcome this question by the member. This is a very serious issue. I have to say that I don't want this to become a bumper sticker because everybody says it, but when we say that it is inappropriate and, it will not be tolerated, I can tell you that it's exactly the case at CSIS. I have made personal commitment to create an ombudsperson to allow for people, even though we have very robust processes inside, and it's been recognized recently by the Federal Court of Appeal that our processes internally to investigate are adequate to address these issues. But it's more important to go over and above that. So we'll have a separate person, an ombudsperson, to look into this. I've also committed to report publicly an annual report on any cases of wrongdoing, which will, of course, will include any case of sexual violence. And I want to take this opportunity to say that anybody who has been affected by sexual violence, personally, my heart goes out to them. And I have made a commitment to all of my employees when I talked to them recently that, if there's any issues that, affects them, please bring this to me personally. And I also made it very, very clear, and I think it's important because the case you referred to, Ms. O'Connell, the media reporting, unfortunately, had very serious inaccuracies in them, and I corrected the record, within 24 hours publicly, that there is absolutely nothing that prevents an employee who has been victim of a crime to engage with the police. And I've made that very clear publicly and to all of my employees. So hopefully that will clear up the ambiguity. But I welcome the question and continue. We need to continue, CSIS and any organization in our country, to continue to do best for the people who are victims of sexual violence. Merci.
Thank you. I think it's important that we have that discussion here today. So thank you for both coming and sharing that. I want to move just quickly. I know I have limited time. Commissioner Kelly, you've said before at this committee in regards to reclassification of inmates and prisoners that the previous conservative language around most appropriate, or I believe your officials have said this in the media as well, that language would still, the threshold and the evaluation that your team collectively does to make these decisions would still have happened under the previous conservative language, because most appropriate is building into also those other factors. And maybe you could list some of the factors that actually go into making transfer reclassification decisions.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. Your time's up. Perhaps one of your teammates can follow up with Ms. Kelly, or she can answer it again. Ms. Michaud, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for the Minister of Public Safety. In the Minister's mandate letter, the safety of our communities and resilience of forests for forest fires by investing in equipment and the firefighting infrastructure. I met recently with a union representing forestry firefighters in Canada, and I was told that these firefighters are not recognized in the same way as regular firefighters. They don't have the same benefits, the same type of equipment either. I'm wondering if you know why the forestry firefighters don't have the same status as regular firefighters. And I'm told it's not necessarily a change in legislation or regulation that we need, but maybe we need to change the national classification of occupations. Could you tell us more about this, please? Thank you, Chair, for the question.
Would want to comment on what an extremely difficult last season it was for forest fires in this country, and we're anticipating another season ahead of us that's going to be quite stressful for the country. Ensuring that our forest fires who work with us in this care have the best possible supports is really important to us, being as well prepared this year or better prepared this year than we were last year. Natural Resources Canada has ownership of some of those aspects of how we support firefighters in this country. So, Madame Michaud, I'm very happy to commit to following up with you in terms of how we can address that very specific question. Merci beaucoup.
Génial, merci. Peut-être.
Excellent, thank you. Now, very quickly to CBSA. The minister announced $28 million regarding automobile theft. $59 million would go to capacity building for Information 5.9 to support the officers doing inspections of containers, $4 million for new technology, $3.5 million to allow the improved capacity on examining containers, especially in the Toronto metropolitan area. Has all this money gone into the CBSA account? How does this work? Are you already able to put in place new policies to help officers do their jobs? And there's a lot of talk about the Montreal port and its containers, but also trains and, goods coming in the country, exiting. Does the CBS's mandate need to change so we can examine what's leaving the country? Already, as we speak, we have increased funding, especially in regard to the Port of Montreal. Cars that are seized, this is evidence that allows the policing agencies to move forward their criminal investigations. We're working closely with Sûreté du Québec and the Montreal City Police and to ensure that protocols are clear. So the numbers... the capacity to open up containers and seize vehicles has increased, and we are working with partners, police forces everywhere, because one of the concern was the huge volume of stolen cars. So we're working on preventing theft, and of course the railways and railway stations are targets. We are trying to share all the data we have as to importers, carriers, to help police forces dismantle the networks for car theft. And I can confirm that the agency remains very committed to act, especially in regard to assisting police forces across the country. If they have any tips on car theft, it's to stop and investigate. Thank you.
We're moving on to Mr. Julian, please.
Mr. President, I'd like to go to you, Ms. Kelly and Ms. Wedes. We've been talking at Public Safety about the horrific crimes of some of these offenders who've been transferred to medium security, Bernardo, McNaughton, Williams. I have two questions. First off, is there a higher risk of escape at a medium security prison than at a maximum security prison? And secondly, for Ms. Wedes, is there a greater possibility that the inmates who are in medium security would be granted parole at the end of their sentence? The crimes that these individuals committed are horrific. It is very clear that Canadians want to be protected from these predators for the remainder of their lives. So I think these are two key questions that I'd love to have responses on.
Okay, thank you for the question. So on the first one, in terms of escapes, the perimeter security at a maximum and medium security is the same. So we have fences, we have walls, we have patrols, and it's also armed correctional officers.
But my question specifically is, if you look at the statistics, is there a greater likelihood of escape from a medium security prison than a maximum security prison?
I would say no. Most of our escapes are from minimum security.
Is it possible you could share those figures with the committee to indicate the rate of escapes at maximum security and medium security prisons?
Yes, I could do that. And on your second question, in terms of...
That's for me.
Oh, that's for you, sorry.
Thank you for the question. I think